Hello, my dear lovelies. It's Adrena from Drena's Haven 916 and Alternative Life Solutions, coming at you with part 2 of Mr. President. This is the sequel to the story that I told about how I found out my very first boyfriend that I met at church was actually a gangster. This story is kind of bittersweet. There's a lot of stories in between this story, but I started at the beginning and now I'm going to just go to the end and then I'll tell stories in between because there are a lot of them. So I remember I was very upset with him because his so-called god sister had been driving his car, and she kept driving by my house with her girlfriends in a car. They're slapping the music, and not the Firebird Trans Am. This was it was like a Seville, it was a candy apple red Cadillac Seville, and it was very, very nice. And she kept driving by my house and taunting me. And when I would ask him about, like, why is she doing that, and he would say, I don't know why she's doing that, that's my god sister, and I'll talk to her about it or whatever. So I didn't accept that, and I was upset with him, and I broke it off with him, and I returned the car. He ended up giving me that Firebird Trans Am for myself to get back and forth to work and just go wherever and do whatever I needed to do. So I had taken the car back to his house, and I had been getting back and forth to work over a couple of days, getting rides from friends who I work with and everything like that. So some days went by, and then he ended up calling me, and it was like maybe around 2:15 or something like that, because I remember I was watching One Life to Live. And he asked me how was I getting to work, and I said I have a ride to work. He said you need to go and get that car and quit tripping and get to work. And I told him, actually, I have a ride, and I'll call you before it's time for me to get off work, because I work the swing shift 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. I'll call you and you can come pick me up and we can talk. So I got a ride to work. I think I left the house. I got picked up like around 2:30, 2:35. Got to work. I worked at a dispatch center. I was a dispatcher, dispatching the police and fire department. So as soon as I got to work, before I clocked in, my supervisor goes,
you need to call your best friend. She called and said it's emergency.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, what is the drama today? Because there was always something, like almost every day. Like I told you, as teenagers, we had a ball. Like we just had so much fun. It was just always something going on, right? So I said, okay, I'm gonna clock in. She was like, don't even worry about clocking in. Ooh, I'm sweating. She said, don't worry about clocking in, just call her. So I called her, and she says, Mr. President has been killed. And I told her, don't play like that. That is not funny. Don't even play games like that, girl. I gotta clock in to work. What's going on? And she said, no, such and such called me and told me that he's been shot. And at that point, I don't remember. I just remember being on the floor, and the phone was on the floor. I remember my coworkers picking me up off the floor, and my supervisor was on the phone with my best friend, and then she called the hospital, and the hospital told her that they were working on a man, and she assured me that they do not work on dead people, and you need to get to the hospital. Don't worry about clocking in, cover your shift, because they knew him as well, because he would come up there. The same person that gave me a ride to work took me up to Highland Hospital. When we got there, all of his friends were there, and it was very somber. I remember a surgeon coming out of the double operating room doors and asking for someone to identify his body, and nobody wanted to do it. So I'm really sweating. So I said, I will do it, and they didn't let me go back there. They just brought out a Polaroid picture of him on the operating table with like tubes, and his face was swollen, like all this gauze and this surgical stuff. And I say, yes, that's him. And was in shock. I don't even remember crying. In shock. And I had to call his mother from the payphone. That's when payphones were everywhere. I used a payphone booth at Highland Hospital. Called his mother, called his sister, and went over to his mother's house. And I remember trying to talk to his sister, and she just took off running down the street barefoot, screaming. And it was really sad. That was my very first time experiencing the death of a violent death of a person that was very close to me. And that is how I found out that my very first boyfriend that I met at church, that I found out was a gangster, that's how I found out that he was murdered. And there are more stories in between, and I will tell those stories as well. So if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button, leave your comments, and I appreciate you all listening to my stories. Telling my stories is very therapeutic for me. Although this was several years ago, these things still affect me today. And I know you all understand that, because the way that we are today, and some things we bury deep down and we don't talk about them, and we don't share them, we don't journal them, we don't blog them, we don't vlog them, and they come out years later in different types of ways. So this is my way of therapy, if you will. This is my therapy of vlogging these stories, my life stories. Thank you. I appreciate you all. I love you. Have a blessed day, morning, afternoon, or evening on purpose, wherever you might be in the world. Talk to you later.
Sharing my story, it's my story, not his story. When I'm sharing, it's transparent, giving him the glory. I know you got a story.